This video is going to start the process of taking the Clawbot base, which is sometimes called the speed build, and adding the rest of the Clawbot so that we end up with a completed Clawbot model that looks like this. Now, looking back at the instructions, you can see they have us build the tower sides, add a motor, connect one side, build the upper and lower parts of the arm, add a gear to the one side, and then start to install those onto the tower, eventually adding the second tower arm and completing it with the claw. Okay, we're going to follow a little bit of a similar procedure. The instructions have you build the two tower sides and set them aside till you need them, and then build the two arm sides and set them aside till you need them. We're going to do much the same in Autodesk Inventor. We are going to make small assemblies for the right side of the tower, the left side of the tower, the lower arm bar that we will attach a gear to, and the upper arm bar. Looking at the instructions for how to build the tower sides, we can see we need a 15-hole C-channel and two of the single post axle bearings bolted on with 3/8" bolts and 832 nuts. The second tower side has one of these, but then we'll get a motor and a bearing flat. So in Autodesk Inventor, I need to start a new assembly to make this separate little part. A couple of ways you can do that. I can go to File, New, pull an assembly out of here. I can just click here for the new shortcut for new. I could also use Control-N, pick a standard assembly. I'm going to bring in the C channel first in the structure folder. 15-hole, there we go. Now that bearing, nut, and bolt, if you recall, we used that earlier and made an assembly out of it. I don't need to place individual parts. I can just go back and find that assembly. One post bearing, nut, and bolt. I can bring in that assembly as one unit. The bolt from the picture in the instructions attaches in this second hole down on this side, and then we just have to spin around and get the axle in this location. There we go. I could simply add a second one. I could do a component or copy the pattern with the component. So let's go back to the pattern feature. It's going to be a rectangular pattern. I already have this component selected. Pick my direction. We're going to go this way. I do have to flip it. By default it wants to go the other way, so I click the flip direction icon and I make sure it goes into the proper hole, and I believe that is the proper hole, just 2 inches down. Click OK, and we are done with that tower side. Now we need to save it and give it a descriptive name, so I'm going to go save, and since it has never been saved and it is a new assembly, it suggests the name assembly 2 for me, but I do want to change it. I am going to call this a tower side, and when you're looking at the robot from the back facing forward, it is the left tower side. To make the right tower side, I'm going to start with a new assembly. I need to bring in the parts we need. That will be a 15-hole C-channel. I will also need a bearing flat from the motion subfolder. And I will need one of the assemblies we just used with the single post bearing flat. Okay, now we're going to differ from the instructions just a little bit. In the instructions, they show you attaching a motor to this. We are going to wait and do that later. We're not going to make the motor part of this assembly. We want the motor to be a bit flexible and have that gearbox move in it, It's a lot easier to do that in the main model if it is not included in this subassembly. Snap that around there, lock this in, and then this bearing flat just needs to be locked in to this top hole, and we can lock it into any one of these like such. That's all we need for the right tower side right now. Let's save it. I'm just going to take the previous name of tower side left and change it to tower side right. Going back to the instructions, you can see that they want me to actually mount the tower side onto the robot. I'm going to hold off on that just for a moment. As long as I'm making assemblies, I'm going to skip ahead one step, and I'm going to make the assembly for the lower arm. Actually, this is the upper arm on the left. On the right, this is the lower arm. If you scroll ahead, you can see it gets the gear attached to it. So right now, we're going to focus on this upper arm. Then we'll make the lower arm. So back in Inventor, we start a new assembly. I need to place a 25 hole bar. Did not mean to rotate that, but it's fine that I did. Going back to the instructions, you can see we need to have the same assembly that we used before with the one post bearing. Let's bring one of those in. Let's change my view to get to the bottom. And let's see if I can put one of these on the end hole. Now I need one on the opposite side. Let's bring in another copy from the model browser. Lock that in there. And that in there. Now at the other end, I need the same pieces, but they need to be flipped around. So doing a pattern really won't work. And there's only two parts. Instead of setting up a defining a plane and mirroring the parts, it'll be just as quick to place them. Let's lock that into place there. Whoops. Control Z. I'm going to undo. That wasn't where I needed it. Let me zoom in. I did the same thing. Want it on the side, right there. And this, right there. The final one. There's my part. I'm going to save that. And we will call that the arm segment top. Taking a look at the lower arm piece in the instructions, you can see that it begins the same as the top piece. Then you have the 4-post retainer that works as a stop between the arms here, and you also add this single post retainer at the top, which helps secure the gear at a later point. So back in Inventor, this starts much with this exact piece we have right here. So I am just going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to change the name of it. That'll leave my copy of the old one, the top piece. And I'm going to change the name to bottom, save it, and now I will be editing the bottom piece. We're going to start with the easier piece, which is just simply the one post hex nut retainer along with its corresponding hex nut. Place those. That goes right underneath one of these bearings. Grab that edge, snap it in here, and then I'll grab this insert, snap it in there. Need to get the nut in place. Grab one of the eye mates and lock it in. I will need to get an angle, so I need to change the view a little bit, zoom out and back in, find that edge, constrain, angle to surface solution, that one and that one. Okay. Take a look at our view overall. Looking back at the instructions, we see that the safety stop has to go into the fourth hole here. To build the safety stop, we need these parts. So back in Autodesk Inventor, I'm going to bring those in. Start with a 1/2 inch spacer since I happen to be in the motion folder. And then from the structure folder, I need to get the 4-post retainer. I need the 1-inch bolt and the hex nut. Going to bring those in. Zoom in, make sure I get the fourth hole up. 1, 2, 3, 4. This needs to place here. Make sure I get it on the proper side. Let's see, I need to get the eye mate on, yep, that side of it. And it posts not like that. Well, actually, yeah, it goes just like that. Oh, didn't get it. Let's try one more time. There we go. Put the nut on this side. Zoom in, try to get an edge and lock it into place with an angle constraint. Got that edge, 2-angle solution, parallel. That's good. Now I'm going to change my view, get the spacer and the bolt from the other side. Simple eye mate for the spacer to the sheet metal, and another eye mate for the bolt. There we go. That is the safety stop. That will keep those bars from closing too much and pinching your fingers if you grab the robot by the arm and lift it. Going back to the instructions, the next thing we need to do to this arm piece is to attach a gear with a couple of spacers and a bolt. Now, one thing that's different from the instructions is we are not going to put an axle in place. Not positive how far we need this axle to stick through the arm. It'll be much easier just to put that axle in place once we have the motor on the arm tower. So back in Autodesk Inventor, I need to place my gear. It is in the motion folder. Okay, there's already a gear with the inserts in place. So I'll just place that gear into our model. You can see there are some planes defined on the gear. We'll use that later for lining up the teeth. Now I also need 2 1/8-inch spacers. There are my 2 spacers. And I believe I will also need a 1-inch bolt from the structure folder. Let's go back to the instructions and double check what we're doing. Now on the top of the piece where we have that single 1-post nut retainer, we have the gear attached here where the axle will go through, spacer in between it, and then the bolt will go through into that. Back in Inventor, that piece is on this side, right there. Let's put the spacers in place, draw them up close to where we need them, zoom in, and let's just lock them in place with some eye mates. Next is the gear. Now, let's see, we'll take this I-mate, snap it in here. Now the gear is free to rotate. I'm going to need to take one of these and line it up with the bolt hole. Now the easiest way to do that is just to line up the centers of the holes. Don't actually have any I-mates on these, so I couldn't use them even if I wanted to. But all I'm going to do is go to my constraint menu. I'm going to leave it on the mate constraint, and I'm going to select an inside edge of one of these holes, and you can see the center line is highlighted through that hole. It's the axis. I'm going to select that for one of them. I'm going to turn around and select the center line of either the black retainer or the nut. That lined them up. Click OK. Now it moves with the arm. The only thing left I have is to drag the bolt over and snap it into the proper hole right there. For that, I can pull an I-mate. Even though there's no I-mate on the hole, Autodesk Inventor knows I have half of an insert constraint, and it will look for something else that I can insert right there. There it is. Just like using an I-mate almost, even though one was not there. There we go. We can save this. It's already been renamed as our bottom arm segment. From here we can move on to assembling the pieces of the arm onto the robot.